I could not believe what I was seeing. I could have filled the back of his head with 5.56, which is an absolute joke.
Well, it's not an ape, because if the Sasquatch was an ape, we would already have one.
What are these elusive hominids that stalk the wilderness? Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to the mystery. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Bigfoot Breakdown. Today we're going to talk about a fairly short article. It's called Ghosts of the Prairie, the Wendigo, the North Woods of Minnesota. Now, I bring up the Wendigo because there are a number of native tribes who talk about the Wendigo as being another word for Bigfoot. So we'll go through this, and I don't think it specifically says that here, but it's interesting what they say. So it starts out, while this creature is considered by many to be the creation of horror writer Algernon Blackwood in his horror tale, The Wendigo, this wood spirit, northern woods and prairies of the state, which they mean tribes, many legends and stories have circulated over the years about the mysterious creature, who was encountered by hunters and campers in the shadowy forests of the upper regions of Minnesota. In one variation of the story, the creature could only be seen if it faced the witness head-on, because it was so thin that it could not be seen from the side. The spirit was said to have a voracious appetite for human flesh, and many forest dwellers who disappeared over the years were said to be victims of the monster. Well, now, where have we heard that before?
Yeah.
So like I said, now this is one variation, and when we went to the Navajo reservation, there were not the Wendigo, but they talk about, see, I wish Don was here to remind me of this stuff, but there were all sorts of things that are said to be seen up there. So, okay. The American Indians have had their own tales of the Wendigo. See, now that's interesting. Now, apparently, that was somebody else. So let me go back to this. The American Indians had their own tales of the Wendigo, dating back so many years that most who were interviewed could not remember when the story had been told, or had not been told, I'm sorry. The Inuit Indians of the region called the creature by various names, including Wendigo, Witiko, and Wetigo, but each of them was roughly translated to mean the evil spirit that devours mankind. Around 1860, a German explorer translated Wendigo to mean cannibal among the tribes along the Great Lakes. Native American versions of the creature spoke of a gigantic spirit over 15 feet tall that had once been human, but had transformed into a creature by the use of magic. Though all the descriptions of creatures vary slightly, the Wendigo is generally said to have glowing eyes, long yellowed fangs, and overly long tongues. Most have a sallow, yellowish skin, but others are said to be matted with hair. They are tall and lanky and are driven by horrible hunger. But how would a person grow to become one of these strange creatures? According to the lore, the Wendigo is created whenever a human resorts to cannibalism to survive. In years past, such a practice was possible, although still rare, as many of the tribes and settlers in the region were cut off by bitter snows and ice of the north. Unfortunately, eating another person to survive was sometimes resorted to, and thus the legend of the Wendigo was created. But how real are these creatures? Could the legend of the Wendigo have been created merely as a warning against cannibalism? Or could sightings of Bigfoot-type creatures have created the stories? While this is unknown, it is believed that white settlers to the region took the story seriously. At times, they even took the sightings and reported. That's interesting. At times, they even took the sightings and reports quite seriously, and made it enough of the local culture that stories like those of Algernon Blackwood were penned. Real-life stories were told as well. And according to the settlers' version of legend, the Wendigo would often be seen, banshee-like, to signal a death in the community. The Wendigo allegedly made a number of appearances near a town called Roselle. I think it's R-O-S-E-S-U in northern Minnesota from the late 1800s through the 1920s. Each time that it was reported, an unexpected death followed, and finally it was seen no more. Wendigo, one of the most famous Wendigo hunters, was a Cree Indian named Jack Fiddler. He claimed to have killed at least 14 of the creatures in his lifetime, although the last murder resulted in his imprisonment at the age of 87 in October 1907. Fiddler and his son Joseph were tried for the murder of a Cree Indian woman. They both pleaded guilty to the crime, but defended themselves, saying that the woman had been possessed by the spirit of the Wendigo and was on the verge of transforming into one entirely. According to their defense, she had to be killed before she murdered other members of the tribe. There are still many stories told of the Wendigos that had been seen in northern Ontario near a cave, the Cave of the Wendigo, and around the town of Kenora, where the creature has been spotted by traders, trackers, and trappers for decades. There are many who still believe that the Wendigo roams the woods and the prairies of northern Minnesota and Canada. Whether it seeks human flesh or acts as a portent of coming doom is anyone's guess. But before you start to doubt its existence, remember that the stories and legends of this fearsome creature have been around since before the white man walked on these shores. And legends have got to be started somewhere, don't they? So what do you guys think?
Personally, I've never ever considered the Wendigo anything to do with Sasquatch, because when you look up the history and the lore, any pictures you see of it, it looks nothing like a Sasquatch. It's got antlers. It's got a deer skull. It's tall and lanky.
They come with antlers.
I think those could be white people's interpretations of them too.
Yeah.
Because
but everything else you said is spot on with it.
Yeah, I've looked at some of the information from natives, and it depends on who you talk to. I told you guys before there was a Haida elder who contacted me years ago when I was writing my first book, and he told me, he said, be careful what you get from different groups, because it depends on their purpose with what it is they're dealing with. I mean, Don talked about skinwalkers. And of course, because of the silly TV show, everybody has a certain idea what a skinwalker is. But, when you talk to the native folks up there, they would concede that, sometimes a skinwalker could be a Sasquatch. It could be, sometimes they're not. And like they talked about at the end of that article, they talked about, the man and his son were convicted of murder for killing that person they said was a Wendigo. Don sent me a picture of an elderly gentleman from the Navajo tribe, and he told me that man was a skinwalker and had tormented their family for decades. And when you look at the picture, it looks like an old man.
Yeah.
What do you think, Forrest?
Well, myth, magic, and religion. You know what? You have to be how can I put this without offending somebody? Not that I really care. You have to believe, it's kind of like voodoo. You have to believe in voodoo for voodoo to work. Mm-hmm. The same thing with magic, myth, and, yes, folks, religion. If you don't believe, most generally you're not affected by it. And the Wendigo is just like, and I'm sorry for interrupting you there, Dave, but that was what I kept going on. Nobody said anything about antlers, because I always hear Wendigos have antlers on their heads. What happened to the antlers? you have to understand that when you're dealing with primitive people, any primitive people, whether they be Native American, South Americans, out in the middle of the ocean on some of these islands, they create creatures and stories to understand what cannot be understood. And it gives them, I guess it's their belief system. I guess that would be the best way to put it. And cannibalism, only in certain areas, have been considered norm for certain societies. I mean, you'll find that in Papua New Guinea, the Maoris in New Zealand did do it, but it was always it had religious connotation and taking mana from the body. It wasn't just like, oh, we're going to have a feast tonight and eat somebody. It was actually, there was a religious purpose and stuff behind it. You're gathering mana from the individual that you were consuming, which means power. So we had a cannibalistic tribe here in the state of Texas. Every other tribe in the state of Texas absolutely feared these people. Let's face it, cannibalism is a very disgusting act to perform. But I don't know of those Peruvian people that were on that plane that had to consume human flesh to survive. I don't know of anybody in the Donner Party that had to consume human flesh to die. They weren't out there killing people. I mean, these people were already dead. They didn't all turn into Wendigos. So, you know, like I say, it's a convenient creation to explain something that they don't understand.
Yep.
And we do it too. We do it too. You know, we do it too. So I'm not going to say that it's just primitive tribes, but I mean, you see it happening every day in society. People create stuff, and you know, it just amazes me.
Well, it's like going back to what Will said a while ago, it's going to depend on different tribes' experiences too. I mean, it's like you'll have some tribes say they're good, some tribes say they're bad. It just depends on that tribe's experience with them and what they know about them. Well, exactly. And, you know, and what is relative to them. They may think they're good and the other guys are bad, and vice versa. The other ones may think the same thing. So it's all relative. Yep.
Right. All righty. Well, we will wrap this one up, folks. We'll put it in your hands. Let us know in the comments what you think.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.